Nikola Jokic has owned the Los Angeles Lakers. Over their last 7 meetings, which includes last year's Western Conference Finals and their 3 matchups this regular season, Jokic has averaged over 28 points, 13 rebounds, and 10 assists per game on 61% true shooting with a 7-0 record. He has eaten them alive. But this rematch is still intriguing. The Lakers have major star power, have been playing their best basketball as of late, are clicking offensively, and are clearly more dangerous than their seed. But the challenge in front of them is the most daunting in basketball today. What in God's name can they do with Nikola Jokic and this Denver offense? Let's start by looking at what was considered the Lakers' ace in the hole when they first deployed it in the final minutes of Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals last year. Jokic had played 3 quarters of perfect basketball, combining ridiculous shot making with pristine decision making, and he was simply owning AD in their individual matchup. So LA had to try switching things up, and they turned to a strategy that Minnesota had put on display earlier in the playoffs. Nobody, not even the best defenders in the world, can really bother Jokic in single coverage. Even Gobert, who was guarding him well, couldn't deny his combination of overwhelming strength, craftiness, and touch shot making. So to maximize his impact, they moved Gobert off of Jokic and into a roamer role matched up with Aaron Gordon, effectively acting as a full-time help defender, where he is at his best and where he could alter and deter Jokic shots around the rim, affect those interior passes, and challenge cutters. They were able to do this because they have a second center in Karl Anthony Towns, who at 7 foot, 250 pounds, could offer some physical resistance to Jokic as his primary defender, and guards him better than most teams' best defensive big. And this approach was a success. Jokic still destroyed Minnesota, but they guarded him better than anyone else, and that strategy was a valuable part of it, as they held him to playoff lows in scoring volume and efficiency, and Denver to its lowest offensive rating in any series out west. So LA sought to replicate that strategy with AD moved to the roamer role and Rui Hachimura, a big, strong forward, as the primary defender on Jokic. And for a quarter, it worked. AD forces Jokic into an exceptionally tough angle on this dump off to Gordon, and it forces a turnover. He's in excellent position to blow this play up here, and his mere presence as a helper forced Jokic to take some tougher shots in an effort to evade him. That, combined with a hot stretch from LA's offense, turned what felt like a completely dominant Denver performance into a shockingly tense game down the stretch. But in the subsequent matchups, Jokic has exposed the flaws with this look. Rui really offers no resistance to him one-on-one. Rui's big for a wing, but Cat, the prototype, is big for a center, so Jokic bullies Rui quite easily out of the post. And then has such absurd touch, this man shoots 62% inside the paint but outside the restricted area, that against a player conceding as much size as Rui, these are basically layups. You cannot allow him to get positioned like this because he can fall away from AD's help without it being a remotely difficult shot, and he can turn and get these shots up so quickly that AD simply doesn't have time to come help. In their last matchup, AD was also very concerned with leaving Gordon, perhaps the premier dunker spot threat in the league, and understandably so, because when AD does help aggressively and converge on Jokic, he does a pretty phenomenal job of delivering those dump off or lob passes to Gordon, at time even disguising them as shot attempts. And if AD is on anyone other than Gordon, he can't help without Jokic dissecting that look and finding a shooter. This is on Reeves. He shouldn't be worried about Gordon basically clearing out along the baseline, but you see why AD can't help off a shooter, and any starter but Gordon is a very good one. AD can still make impactful plays in the roamer role. He's great there, but there are too many ways to work around him in these looks when Rui is like tissue paper to Jokic. Rui's lack of size poses issues in other ways too. He's incapable of affecting passes to cutters, and he really can't bother Jokic at all on these floaters or his spot-up jumpers. Rui guarding Jokic also makes the pick and roll with Jamal Murray extra potent, because instead of Anthony Davis, the best defender on the planet in my opinion, guarding these actions primarily out of drop coverage, Murray can drive on Rui with much less resistance and get even cleaner pull-up looks against a smaller defender. LA surprisingly had Rui on Jokic for a good majority of their last meeting, but I would not recommend they repeat that strategy because it did not work. AD played a poor defensive game by his standards, and he just has to be more active for this strategy to work at all. You have to crowd Jokic and force him to make the pass to Gordon in a congested situation, which he probably will, but you can't let him score at will on Rui. And AD did a better job of helping on Jokic in the series last year, but Jokic still consistently got good position on Rui, rained those touch shots over him, and anticipated AD's help quite effectively after game 1. So that look ultimately had little impact on a Nuggets offense that actually produced their best offensive rating, a ridiculous 122 against the Lakers. If they are going to try AD in the roamer role, LeBron actually guarded Jokic better than Rui in the series last year. He's even bigger and stronger, and his hands are so good that he affected him a bit more. But Rui has consistently been the one assigned to Jokic when they go to those looks, presumably because LeBron can't be asked to carry that sort of burden on both sides of the ball at this age. So I would put AD on Jokic for the vast majority of this series. He can force him into some tough first shots because of his size and affect those hooks and touch shots with his length as much as just about anybody. And I just want to make sure my defensive superstar is involved against their offensive superstar as much as possible. But AD has still had a really hard time guarding Jokic in single coverage. Jokic is just so much stronger than him, and after bullying him, does a great job clearing out space for his hooks with physicality, or he can go to these turnarounds that are automatic. This is why I consider Jokic the most unstoppable scorer on the planet. That combination of size and strength and touch means he gets to his spots against anybody and then he barely misses. And that's why the make Jokic a scorer philosophy is so ridiculous. When defenses didn't commit or send a hard double this year, Jokic generated 1.25 points per post-up. That's unconscious. Even though AD holds up better than a vast majority of defenders in those spots, Jokic is still going to give him the business. So the Lakers can have their perimeter defenders dig to pester Jokic a bit, but he anticipates those digs and consistently times his kickouts perfectly. And the Nuggets have really good shooters. MPJ, Murray, and KCP are all 40% or better from deep, so they will step into those shots and hit them quite efficiently. That's not ideal. Your last main option is the hard double. This is considered a no-no against Jokic because he's the best passer alive and the Nuggets are so smart about cutting and they have so many good shooters. But for the last 3 years, Jokic post-ups have actually been less efficient when teams double. He still picks you apart, and if you double from the nearest shooter or off of Gordon, those are automatic easy reads for him. But he's just so devastating in single coverage that if you can selectively crowd him by doubling from the weak side so he has to make an accurate cross-court pass under that pressure, it's slightly better than the certain death you face otherwise. But he's huge and he sees everything, and unless he gets a switch, in which case you have to double, you can only do it sporadically or he'll anticipate those looks and murder you. Doubling also requires LA's guards to be active and dialed in and annoying to an extent I'm not confident they're capable of. The reality is the Lakers will probably try some combination of all these looks, and giving him variety like that is a good idea, but none of them will really work. There's no answer. Every option I just laid out still leads to great shot quality because Jokic is the best scorer and passer alive with a very well-designed supporting cast. He and this Nuggets offense are just an unsolvable problem. And we haven't even discussed how Jamal Murray in that two-man game makes the Nuggets all the more unguardable. By the way, Jamal has filleted the Lakers recently and gave them 32 points per game on 65% true shooting in this series last year. This man is one of the best pull-up shooters in the league, 47% for mid-range, 43% on pull-up threes, and the Lakers do not have a good, healthy option to deal with him at the point of attack. Shout out Gabe Vincent, he's just a little too small to actually bother Jamal, and I highly doubt he gets as many minutes as D'Lo or Reeves. So if this were a normal offense, maybe you'd blitz a guy like that to take away those pull-up looks. But you cannot do that, because then you give Jokic a 4-on-3 and he'll either destroy you with that paint touch or dot up a shooter or cutter. Hedging hard basically leaves you with the same predicament since those pocket passes to Jokic are open and leaves him with a 4-on-3, even though AD affects those pocket passes better than anyone else. You can't switch, even though AD can hold up against Murray in space. The Lakers tried that in crunch time of their last meeting, and it left Austin Reeves on Jokic, which means you need to help, and then Jokic threw up this beauty to Aaron Gordon, who he has the best chemistry in the league with, and switching pulls AD out of the paint, which means Jokic will score down there with an overwhelming size advantage and very little resistance. So then you're left with AD playing drop coverage, not too deep, hoping Jamal misses his pull-up jumpers and Jokic isn't consistently popping and raining those threes on you or hitting you with the pump and go in a physical drive if you close out hard. But Jamal is a great pull-up shooter, and Jokic has been over 40% from deep in his playoff career, and he did bully AD on most of those drives last year. But this coverage is probably what the Lakers have to live with, and it's definitely how they'll start, and that tells you just how unstoppable the Jokic-Murray two-man game is. Then there's the inverted pick and roll Jokic can run, where if you hedge, he'll dissect you with his passing, and if you give him some room to pull that three, he'll hit it. That's another lethal action they can pick their spots with. The elite offense just doesn't stop coming. LA has the best defender on the planet, and Jokic dominated him so thoroughly last year that he became a public laughingstock for a bit. And that's not even fair, because nobody can do anything with Jokic. He's the best offensive player probably ever, and he just averaged 30, 13.5, and 9.5 on 63% true shooting in a title run. This is why I'm not just confident in Denver winning this series, but I have them winning the title. This is one of the most consistently great offenses ever, and to anybody tasked with figuring out how to slow them down, all I can say to you is good luck.